Yo, yo, what's up, guys? I'm Ben or Bijou. I'm based in Phoenix. I make G House. I'm gonna go through a couple tracks today. I'm gonna kind of go through my writing process, my sound design, like the creative flow of everything, and really give you guys like an inside look on how I write. It's very simple, very simplistic. A little bit more about me. I've been producing for about 10 years now. Started everything in 2010. Actually started as like a trance guy. Moved from there to like Dirty Dutch, and then I always wanted to kind of bring together hip hop and house music. So now full time G House. I have my own label, D&D Rex. Um, Album comes out next week called Diamond City. So I'm excited to work with you guys. So here's the first track. It's called Chop 'em Up. It's going to be the lead single off of my next Nightbase EP that comes out in November. Let me play this one for you guys.
Set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out, chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out, chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out, chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out.
Set 'em up,
All right, guys. So that's the track. So a little bit about the background of it. For this one, I was kind of playing off of like West Side. If you guys haven't heard West Side, it's a very, very heavily like West Coast influenced G House record by Dr. Fresh and I. It's something in regards to sound that we were really, really trying to bring back because nobody is really doing that like pure West Coast G House sound at the moment. Um, So taking that and how that track is doing, I was like, all right, I want to translate that into a follow-up. So if you're listening to the instrumentation in this, you can kind of hear in the synths and the bass and the vocals, it's like very, very West Coast influenced, which is something that in my background is very, very important. So talking about kind of creative flow. So I feel like creative flow and kind of being in that zone, I like to compare it to sports. If you ever played sports before, you kind of get tunnel vision and you get locked in, you kind of forget where everything else is and what everything else that's happening. I played baseball, so I was a pitcher. You get the tunnel vision, it's just you and the catcher, you know? So when you're in that creative flow in regards to your music, I feel like you get the same thing. You know, it's just you and Ableton or whatever DAW you're working in, Logic, FL, whatever it is. It's just you and the music, you know? And that's something that can be quite difficult to get into in today's day and age because there's so many distractions, especially as like an artist. It's like, all right, you have promo you have to do, you have music you got to do, you have other things, you know, there's a million different things that you have to worry about. So there's something I do. It's once a week. I call it the 1 hour challenge. And what I do is I try to write as much of a song as I possibly can in an entire hour. And I found what that allows me to do is just forget everything that's going on. I put my phone away, forget what's happening, and I just focus on the music for an hour. You'll set the clock, you'll set the timer, and you kind of just like, boom, you go, you know? And you're on the clock. So it's not like there's a pressure of anything, but what you're doing is you're just working through the song, you know? This is one of those tracks where I did that. I actually had the vocals previously, and it was a lot easier to kind of work off of that. In my opinion, I found it to be the easiest working off of vocals because you already know what key you're in, you already know what chord progression you're in, and you can kind of work around the record. You know where everything needs to hit, so all your instruments are syncopated. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of turning some stuff back on that's deactivated so I can kind of show you guys like my creative process and how I go through some things. So this was the track. I finished about 90% of it in an hour, I would say. It just flowed, you know, and it's like, I started this one specifically with the vocals. So let me start this off. We'll play the vocals, solo them, kind of go into that for you guys.
What 'em up, set 'em up. Chop 'em up, what 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, serve it up, swing around, shoot it up. Chop 'em up, what 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up.
So nothing super, super crazy. So this is a rapper named Splash Woe. He is out of LA. I've worked with him a couple times. How this actually came about was he sent me some hip hop records just to check out, and this was one of them, and I asked him for the vocal stems and he sent it over. So he has an amazing engineer who goes by the name of Mike Jers. Mike is an absolute legend. So I didn't have to do a lot to these vocals. Let me turn the processing off so you guys can kind of see how it sounds. It's funny, I see a question in the chat. What was your favorite pitch to throw slider? For sure. That was the one for me. So processing off, if you notice, he has a very, very deep and tonal voice. So I kind of have issues working with that sometimes because with dance music, house music specifically, you really, really need those vocals to come out and they need to be clear. And I found that it's an issue with him because he mumbles a lot. So can we get a volume match? Are you guys having a hard time hearing me? I'm going straight through my speakers. It's not through the mic. So that's why there might be some issues with the mic. So with these vocals, I'll play them without the processing.
Chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out. Chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out.
Alright, let me drop this real quick. Cool. Alright.
Chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it out.
So if you notice, it's kind of clear, but it's not super clear. It's a little bit mumbled, but it sounds good. So what I did, I always pull the low end. This is like, everything I do is very simplistic. You're not going to get a bunch of insane processing, insane EQing. I just don't find it to be necessary. And I found that with simplicity, it just kind of makes things easier. And I found that my creative flow works a lot better when I keep things simple. So we're cut at 126, and I boosted around the 3500 range. I know that's kind of like a no man's land a little bit, but it sounded best. Something that I kind of stick by is engineers hate me for this all the time because I'll do random things and they'll be like, well, that doesn't make sense from an engineering standpoint. And I'm like, does it sound good? I feel like in the end, to the ear, if it sounds good, that's the most important thing. And then we're cut at about 17.5. Gabriel's asking if I mid-side EQ when I process. Not really, to be honest with you. Not a ton. Honestly, not really at all. So I'll show you guys how much this is a little bit brighter with that EQ. So here's before
Chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up,
and after.
chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down.
Brings it to life. The other thing, so Alex, so many house producers struggle with the 8-bar loopitis. What's one piece of advice that you would give them to break out of that? Explain to me what you mean by 8-bar loopitis, because like the way I work here is I build out my entire track in an 8-bar loop. And the reason I do that is I found that like a lot of times when people are beginning producers, right, is they'll be like, all right, I need to have an amazing drop. And they'll write this drop and it's cool. And then they'll be like, all right, well, I got to have this amazing breakdown. The vocals have to sound good. And the buildup needs to transition smoothly. And then when they'll get to the actual drop, it won't be cohesive. And if we're thinking house music, right, like you can do a dubstep track and you can have a random drop out of nowhere. But if with house music, everything is kind of seamless and smooth, and that's what makes house music so special. So I found that working this way, it's kind of foolproof in a sense. It's only not worked for me one time. And in that sense, I'm like, all right, I have a very strong breakdown. I have a very strong drop. Now you can flush these out and you have 2 different tracks and you can work off of those. So it's kind of a win-win. And as you can see, I have all my drums. I have my synths, the majority of the synths, and I have my vocals in this loop, and it ensures everything's in key, everything's cohesive, all my instruments are complementing each other, and they just sound really, really nice. So I hope that helps in regards to the question with the 8-bar loopitis. I just think that if you have that loop and then flushing things out, also I think too what is really, really important is actually using reference tracks, you know? I don't find anything wrong if you are finding a similar track or something in a similar style that you really enjoy and you're like, okay, I think my track fits this realm. So you don't have to necessarily emulate that arrangement exactly, but you're like, okay, this is a starting point, and then you can kind of build off of it and learn arrangement piece by piece, you know, because that really takes time. And like composing music in regards to writing is its own thing, but I feel like composing music in regards to arrangement is its own world too, you know, because certain arrangements don't fit for every single track. So building off of that a little bit before I go into like the components of this one here, it's like, all right, we have a very, very simple 16 bar intro, right? We'll go, let me open this. So we got 16 bar intro. This is for like DJ purposes, you know? We got an 8-bar break. We have an 8-bar
Make your
build.
music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
8-bar build. Then we go 16-bar drop, you know, and the only difference that comes in the second 8 bars is we get a little bit of vocal and we get some percussion, right? But then we break it down. And what we do is I cut the low end here on the EQ with the kick, and I did the same with the actual bass line. So we pulled the sub. So this is kind of like, it's not necessarily an immediate break. It's almost a rebuild into that second drop. And then that second drop, what we do is we introduce a new instrument, which would be this sound here. So that's a little bit of the first half of the arrangement, which I'll go into the second half more once I kind of break down this instrumentation for you guys and you have a better idea in regards to that. So, next thing with the vocals was the speech enhancer. This is something that I utilize a lot in regards to muffled vocals when I really need to brighten things up. It's in your multi-band dynamics right here. Boom, drop down, you got speech enhancer. So, as you can see, I boosted a ton in the highs. As I was saying earlier, for obvious reasons, this dude mumbles, and I really, really need that high frequency and a little bit of the mids to be brought out so you can really, really hear what's going on. It's a very, very important aspect in regards to his vocals. So here's before for you guys.
Chop 'em up, wet 'em up, set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it up.
It really brings it to life. It brings out that reverb too, but it's not really washing it out too much. As you can see, I turned off the lows. We cut the lows already, so it's cohesive there. We don't need any low frequencies in regards to the vocals. His voice is already deep enough. So I boosted 3 dB in the mids. I boosted 9.38 on the highs. So other than that, there's no crazy vocal processing on this. I chopped little pieces of his vocals here with just as accents with some delay. As you can see, I cut here on the actual low end a little bit more, and then we just have a dotted quarter note. Nothing crazy. And it's kind of muted. Where I utilized that here too was on the pre-drop. He has the let's go, and what I did was I layered this, pitched it down 5 semitones. So we're here. And it just gives it a little bit of texture, you know? I like to layer vocals like that because they just sound good. Kyle or Volka just asked a question. How do I approach my songwriting? So that's a very, very good question. I have a few different processes in regards to my actual songwriting. Like I was stating earlier, this is that 1 hour challenge track. My preferred way to write is in regards to vocals. Like I was saying as well, you can build the track around it. If we're talking writer's block, okay, which is something that everybody goes through, it's normal, you know? You're gonna hit it at some point. I've found with house music, right, I think about it in regards to like a fan. Say I'm on the dance floor, and I'm like, all right, well, if I'm on the dance floor, what aspect of the song am I actually dancing to? And if we're talking in terms of that, it's the drums. You know, like the groove is going to be the drums. If you're DJing and you're watching the crowd, everyone's grooving to the drums. They're either going to be on the offbeat or they're going to be on the 1 or the 2. Very, very simple. So another thing I really like to do in regards to songwriting with that aspect is I'll build out 4 or 5 different drum loops just to kind of get in a groove. And I found it to be a very, very successful way to think of other ideas. And if I don't, then I just have really, really strong drums, you know? So again, that's a win-win situation. So, but I found it's very, very specific that once I build out a very, very nice groovy drum loop, I'm usually in the studio vibing. I'm standing at that point, which I do a lot. and I'll get ideas and really work off of it. Um, Gabriel's asking what if it's just a vocal hook, like Chris Lake style vocal, do you start with bass and drums? A lot of times, yes, I will, if it's just a very, very simple vocal hook. Something I like to do too, because my stuff is a little bit different in regards to like what Chris Lake is doing. I'll create a vocal chop out of it and try and get something bouncy. But with that kind of thing, I've found that that's more of like a pre-drop vocal and it's very, very simple. And with those vocal hooks, your bass and drums is probably going to be your best bet. Drums first, I'd say, because then you can kind of ensure that everything is going to be on time in regards to your vocal. And then you can kind of build the bass line and syncopate it off of that. So I hope that answers the question. And then Christopher's asking, what is your best advice in making sure vocals are as pristine as possible? It's kind of a subjective question because pristine is a very, very broad term. But I've found in regards to them being pristine, the way I gauge that is that they are sitting nicely in the actual mix. And they're sounding nice and clean. Like, for example, this one was muddy, so I EQ'd and added the speech enhancer to make sure that they're crisp and clear. Now, say that this track was a little bit darker and grittier, I may want to go for a more muted style of vocal. So, next piece, I see there's some more questions. I'll get to them in just a minute. I just want to make sure I can go through the instrumentation with you guys on this. Yeah, just as clear as possible. With house music, I think it's very, very important that your vocals are clear and concise and people know what they are saying. Because a lot of times, like, that may be the hook to the track that people are really following along. All right. So next thing for this, I felt vocal-wise it was very, very important in regards to the drums. I was like, this seems like a night bass track. All the night bass records have a really, really strong groove. So let me play these drums by themselves. And Vasily, I think this will kind of answer your questions in regards to my samples. So as you can see, it's a very strong groove. All my drums are samples. I don't program drums from scratch. I'm going to be totally transparent with you guys. I feel like programming drums for me specifically and what I do is a waste of time. I'm really, really big on like writing flow, and I feel like creating drums and programming drums from scratch just kind of takes away from that. So as you can see, everything is samples, everything's chopped up, and I've kind of created my own grooves. I don't use groove pools ever. I like to utilize the actual transients in drums, which I'll go to in regards here, to kind of create groove, and then I like to use sidechain plugins and sidechain compression to kind of create my groove too. So very simple kick. If you guys have heard my song Memories, this is the actual same kick. So processing wise, no crazy EQing on here. We're cut at 30.3 and my top is cut at 16.7. Nothing crazy, it's nice and punchy, which I wanted for this track. Something I do want to preface is this kick is in A and the track is in D. So if you guys are familiar with music theory at all, you know that the perfect fifth is 7 semitones. So the root note of my bass is in D, and this is going to help with like cleaning up your low end, right? So think about the frequency range, right? So say we're hitting in D here, that's my bass line, and my kick was in D as well. We'd be sitting in the exact same frequency range unless we were an octave up or an octave down, which you can do. Something that I found to be very, very helpful is I'll have my bass line in D, and then I'll have my kick in the perfect fifth, which would be A, which would be 7 semitones. So what that's doing is that is creating space in between your bass and your kick to kind of clean up that low end frequency a tad bit more. And I've found that's really, really helped with cleaning up my low end and phasing issues as well. The bit warmer saturator, this is literally just the stock bit warmer settings. It's nothing crazy. And then this is one of my favorite plugins actually as a stereo imager. So this is the Brainwork Shred Spread. It's from Plugin Alliance. One reason I like it, I think the speaker's cool, so I just kind of rock with it. One thing too is you can kind of see where everything's sitting. I wouldn't recommend ever really going above 100%, or you're going to really, really spread everything super, super wide, and it's going to be excessive here. So I'll never go more than 100%, and I'll utilize that more on my basses than anything. But if we're sitting in mono, we can see here that it's right in the middle. Something else that's cool about this, whoever engineered this and coded this one, there's something with this plugin I haven't been able to figure out, but when you're spreading that image, there's an automatic like no phasing function, which is amazing, because a lot of times when you're spreading stuff into the stereo image, you're spreading it into the space of other actual instruments, and you'll have issues with phasing, and this just doesn't have that. It's amazing. So that's my kick. Clap-wise, I kind of layer everything, as you can see here. This top one, it's more of a click. It's kind of an accent sound. Also, I have a full parallel glue compressor on here. Nothing crazy. It's pretty quick. It just adds a little bit of brightness, and it really glues these together and gives them some punch. I don't like to over-compress things, and I also don't use a ton of compression because I feel like it takes away from the fullness of the sounds. So, here's that click. No crazy EQing. We're cut at like 516, and we're cut at 505. This was more of like a rhythmic sound to actually give it a little bit more bounce. So what I like to do is like, I'll stack my claps, and I'll kind of hit 3 different frequency ranges. I'll have like a higher frequency clap, I'll have a mid-range one that's kind of the guts, and I'll have another one that's more muted. So this top one is that high end. No crazy EQing. Here's the mid-range one, just the guts. And those are panned 5 left, or 5 right and 5 left, just to give them some space, nothing crazy. I do have Valhalla on here, not a ton of reverb. This sample actually had reverb on it already, so I didn't want to add too much and kind of wash it out. Something with my reverb that I think is really, really important with the claps, I always try to have it end right here at that next kick, just for cleanliness purposes, and I've realized it adds like kind of a cool like reverb swirl into the next kick and kind of gives it like almost a reverse type sound. And then we have this one here, which is more muted. So if we get that with the kick, nothing crazy. And that one I actually switched up a little bit, -1 milliseconds on the grid, just because I always feel like the clap hitting a little bit before the kick, if I'm going to move it on the grid, is going to be more important. And I just moved that specifically too, so it kind of had a little bit of its own space. Something I would do next here is I'm going to make sure that the vocals are on time, which is a crucial thing. And as you can see here too, I moved them to the right 1 millisecond because they were a tad bit off.
What am I? What am I? Set 'em up, eat 'em up, break it down, stir it up, swing around, shoot it up.
Yeah, Chris, totally, I agree. The reverb probably fills in more silence, which is very important. And something I really believe in is that in your song, reverb compounds, you know? So a lot of these sounds are going to have reverb. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put a little bit less than I think I need. And then towards the end, I'll push it forward if I think I need more. Because over time, more and more reverb with your instruments, like I said, it's going to compound. It's going to really, really add up. So let's go into the hi-hats, which is quite a few layers. But it's kind of like, it looks like a lot of layers and a lot's going on, but everything is kind of sitting in its own space, and it adds some depth. So this top one is just like a very, very simple 909. It's panned 11 left, literally no crazy processing. A lot of the reason too I don't do a ton of crazy processing is because I just try to find really, really high quality samples, which is really accessible these days. Let's And we got this one here. So if you notice on the EQ, this one's cut a tad bit more. It's at like 13.5 thousand kilohertz because this one below it is complementing it, and that one's panned 11 right. But that one is a little bit sharper on the attack, and it has a little bit more high. And as you can see, there's a little bit of rhythm here. So this is what I was talking about in regards to playing with the transients. So if you guys haven't seen this before, what you can do in beats, right? So when you bring in a sample, it's going to be sitting in beats. You're going to have, it's going to say trans, and you're going to have the right left arrow, and it's going to be sitting at 100. So if we listen to that, you'll see it's going to sound like the exact same hi-hat, right? So it's like, boom, cool. You get that, but you don't really get the bounce. So something I like to do, what you can do here, is we'll go to this top arrow facing right, which is the actual sustain and decay. It's going to play with it. We can bring this down, right? So you're only going to really get the attack and that click of the actual sound. So I had it cut to 13, and as you can hear, you only get the click, right? So what that's doing is that's adding a little bit of groove. It would be almost the exact same thing as actually building your drums out in MIDI and then playing with the velocity, but just from my experience and my opinion, I feel like you kind of get more of the effect doing it in actual audio. And then these are sitting 11 left, 11 right, and working together. So this was a loop that I chopped up. I like to use top loops just for some rhythm. They're just fun. So I cut this one up. This is what gives it a lot of groove here. So on this one you can see I dipped around 12K. The reason for that is I felt it was kind of sharp, which I'll let you guys hear. It's a lot warmer, right? And then this is my favorite sidechain plugin. It's Nicky Romero Kickstart. It's just, there's so many options with it that I really, really love it. Something to keep in mind, when you bring this onto your channel, it's going to be sitting 100% on the mix. Make sure you play with the mix knob unless you really want it to dip that much, or you're going to lose a lot of frequency in regards to your sound. So this one's 16 left, and then that one is working together with this shaker, which I did the same transient trick with as well as that actual closed hat. So then I'll play those together. That also has kickstart and a simple EQ. As you can see, this one on the percentage-wise, it's a little bit less. Just because nothing's really hitting on the one, so it didn't even necessarily need it. The reason I want everything sitting left and right too is it's very, very important that you have a balanced mix. It's very, very crucial. So this shaker here, as you can see, this was more of an accent sound that just added a little bit of groove and a little bit of depth to the actual percussion. So here's with no processing on it. It's fairly sharp. So I added an auto pan, which was quite drastic. I just felt like it was cool moving back and forth. And if you notice, right, there's 6 sounds in my actual percussion. But this one below it is not sustained, so I have an auto pan on those last 2 to keep them going back and forth to keep my mix balanced. So there's that, and then here's with the actual sidechain on it. It's really, really strong. And then this one here is kind of an accent sound. And that has an even stronger auto pan and kickstart. Next piece was, I want to go into the bass with you guys real quick, just to make sure that we get through this, because this bass line, I think, is one of the most important aspects of it, because it really, really gives it some bounce and groove. So let me play this for you guys. So, sound design wise, let me get into that a little bit. Here's previously, right? So, total transparency, I don't do much sound design from scratch. I really, really work off presets, and I hear the potential of something. Like I'll hear a sound and be like, all right, this is what I want it to sound like, and this is what I think it can sound like, and it'll be really, really helpful. So that's kind of how I work. So this is before. Right? So this is silent. It's a silent preset. Silent, hands down. Actually, let me solo that. That wasn't solo. Sorry. There you go. Much different than previously. So this was a silent preset. I'm a diehard silent user. I use it probably for 90% of my basses. I just found that it's a lot warmer than a lot of the newer plugins. I mean, you can get really warm sounding synths in Serum, but I've just found that I prefer silent, and it's old school, and I like to kind of do things the old school way. So let me go piece by piece here, as there's quite a bit of processing on this. EQ-wise, I split the top bass and the sub. I just felt like the sub wasn't strong enough, and I wanted to give it its own space too, and ensure that I had enough control over the sub itself so that it wasn't phasing and there wasn't any issues. So here's the EQ. Here's before. So I cut the low end pretty hard. We're at like 95.8, but it's like a hard cut. And there's some pretty drastic boosting at 1K, which I typically wouldn't do a lot of or normally do at all, but it just sounded good here. So I was like, all right, let me get the grit. Do I still rock the Vengeance packs? Every now and then I'll use some Vengeance samples for sure. That's a good question. So here's before. It just gave it a little bit more mid-range grit, which I was looking for here because that's like that vintage, like real G-House sound. Next thing here is we have the bit warmer saturator again. It's like my go-to, but I went into the soft sign. Really bring it to life. All right, Alex has a question. Let's see what's up. Can you briefly expand on how you get up and start dancing to the track when in the early stages of composition? I feel like that's a wildly underrated thing to do as a producer. Honestly, like once I have my drums in here and I get a vibe, I'll literally stand up and I'll just work standing up. I feel like getting that groove and getting that bounce and you dancing to the actual song is so important because that's going to embody what people listening to music are going to do. Think about it. We literally make dance music. You know, if you can't dance to the music, then what are we doing? You know, I just feel like it's not as effective as it actually needs to be. And I think having that initial groove in regards to house music and G-House in general is so crucial, you know, because once you have those drums and you're rocking and you have that groove, the bass is riding with it. And that low end in the bass and the kick is what really, really drives music in regards to G-House. So I hope that answers that question for you. So with that saturator, next we have Decapitator. This is a Sound Toys plugin. It's a fucking beast. You got to be very, very careful with it. And it can really, really overpower things. In a sense, what it did here was it muddied it up a little bit, but it gave it like some width and some depth to the actual sound and made it fuller. So these are stock settings on Beefy. So we'll go to the Beefy preset and boom, we're there. Let's see. Do I have a standing desk? Nah, I want a standing desk. It's probably so bad for my back. I'll be like moving up and down. All right, so here's before real quick. Before. Gives it that fullness. So let's go into the Brainworks shred spread like I showed you guys earlier. We're split at 100. This is how I get the width on my basses. So what I'll do is I'll split my top end from my sub and I'll spread it out 100% on here, and then I'll have my sub sitting in mono, and it kind of makes it full and wide. And then we have kickstart. Sub, I'm not going to go too much into the sub because it's literally the same exact sound. I just cut the top and I close the actual filter A cutoff a little bit. Probably too heavy to be honest with you, but it sounds good, so I'm like, fuck it. With these accents, right, here was the original chord progression. It's cool and it's catchy, and the way I write with my bass line is like in hooks. I think about like a hip hop record, the hook in regards to the vocals is going to be the most memorable part of it. So what I like to do is write my actual hooks and my bass lines that way, so it's like a hook of an actual vocal record, if that makes sense. But with this one, it was a little bit linear and boring, so I took a couple bass loops and just cut out singular sounds. And then this one is pitched up an octave. And then here, same thing, it's two little pieces that are cut. So if we get that together, which on here, I have a bass punch in parallel. Silent, what would you, Chris? My other top two main VSTs you run for your tracks that you can rely on to lay down what's going on in your head. Silent, massive, and then honestly, like, probably, that's such a good question. I love Sub Boom Bass by Rob Papin. The basses in there are amazing. So let me play this with the drums just so you guys can hear the groove. Everything is consistent, working together, vocals. So we'll go into the synths real quick for you guys. I actually worked with this art before the bass in regards to my songwriting. You have a rounded cut on the low end of your sub. Is that so your kick will have a bit more room? The answer to that is yes. And like I was stating earlier, that kick is sitting in A where the bass is in D. So we have that space there as well. So this was the 1 hour challenge track. So instead of writing a chord progression, I was like, yo, I'm just going to go with an ARP because it's a sustained note. But I made it a little more interesting. It's something I wanted to go into as well in regards to layers. So we got this here. No crazy EQing. And I have an auto pan on it. To make this a little more interesting, I doubled the channel, froze and flattened it to audio, and then I took these last four notes. I panned the first two hard left and the second two hard right. And what it did is it added a little bit of actual space and substance to that, so it wasn't so linear. So it adds a little bit to it. I'll answer that vocal question in just a moment. This was the only sample I used in regard to the synths, which is this West Coast sound. It's like that sine wave, like that flute lead. I've been sitting on it for like 3 years and never was able to get a track with that actual lead where I was like, all right, it's working. And this was the first one. It's from like an old hip hop pack. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to use it. So here's that. So there's that. I'm going to play that with the synths real quick.
Break it down, start it up, swing around, shoot it up.
A couple other synths. I have my Reese here. Silent. Kickstart for the sidechain. And then I actually spread this out a tad bit just to give it some space. because it's a little bit more mid-range, but it has that sub on it. I primarily use Reese's like this for kind of filling out space in my intros and my breakdowns. Just an accent sound that I really, really enjoy. Then we have this funk sound here, which kind of has some crazy processing on it. This was used more as like an impact type of sound. And that was a silent actual sound that I bounced to audio. I spread this out like crazy because in that second drop, if you hear it, I use it as an impact and as an accent, and I want it to be really wide and sound really, really big. Bit warmer again, simple processing. The reverb's a little bit stronger on this, nothing crazy. And then I have an 8th note actual ping pong delay on it, which I really like about this because it adds some space and it fills in empty space too. And then just a quick 29% kickstart on here. So the last piece, I just have this horn. This was a sample on the last drop just to add a little bit of depth where, let's see, this is drop 3 and I have this horn. Simple sample, literally only kickstarts on it. I haven't even EQ'd it yet. One thing I do want to go through, which is kind of like a cool accent thing, I have these birds, which kind of goes with the concept of the track. And it's kind of like an underlying layer. I always like to put like a really, really cool underlying layer that kind of goes with like the theme of the track. And I felt like this one was very, very fitting. Something else too is if you listen to the vocals, he says chop them up. So I added this sword. And that has a big auto pan and a dotted quarter note on it and some reverb. So I'll let you guys hear that so you can hear how it is specifically. Little things like that in regards to house music I feel like are super important because those little details and those little pieces are what can really take the track from being good to actual great. And that's something that I think is super important. So going into the vocals as I load the next one for you guys. Vocal features are something that have taken me a very, very long time to finally get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm working with like quite a few rappers. Honestly though, like Vince Staples has said it best, and he's big. He literally has said, as long as the track is dope, he's down with it. Obviously, like that's probably not the case always, but I think it's something that in regards to vocals, you just should reach out to vocalists and see what you think will work, you know? Shoot them a couple tracks, maybe some instrumentals. Be like, hey, this is what I do, this is what I'm doing. But keep it simple and straight to the point, because I found that when you're sending like these really, really long emails and things of that sort, you tend to not get a reply because these artists and these rappers and these vocalists are really, really busy. And when you're very, very cordial, straight to the point, you kind of, I'd say, get a better answer. Mastering wise, I send my stuff out. I have a very simple master chain that I kind of utilize when I'm like going through, let's see, one sec, sorry guys, 1 second, let me get this right. So I can go through that in a little bit if you'd like, but mastering wise, like I get all my stuff engineered, just to be totally transparent. So this is the second track. This is like the official follow-up to West Side. That's gonna come out probably sometime in 2021. I don't know exactly when yet. But this is really, really West Coast themed. It's with a rapper named Tony Watts. He's from Phoenix. Forum-wise, I've never used any forums for rappers. I'm like a huge hip-hop head. So let me make sure everything's on it right. Cool. Turn that off real quick. Cool.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
So, yeah, I can give you guys my mastering engineer's info for sure. Yeah, Sam, Ryan does majority of my mastering. All right, let me play this one for you guys. Let me get this. Let me kick this on the utility. We'll go -6 again.
What's up? I ain't coming down. What's up? I ain't coming down.
So that's that one. This one's called Rockstar. I think I might change the name, but we'll see. So this one actually started a little bit differently. The arrangement is very, very similar to West Side. It's kind of simple, straight to the point. A lot of the reason why I keep things so simple and try to just really, really focus on simplicity is because I found that when I overproduce, not only do people not really understand it, but I've also found that there's nothing in the track for them to really connect with. You know, if you think about it, you're like, okay, the song sounds great, and there's a lot going on, and there's amazing instruments, amazing sound design, the drums sound good, there's a great groove. But the issue is that everything's like, there's so much going on that you're like, all right, it sounds good, but like the bass line, you can't attach to it to the groove. Maybe the drums don't have a groove. Maybe the vocal's not catchy enough. And that's something I found to be very, very important. This is something Chris Lake like preaches, and I've really, really kind of dissected his process and found that what he does with that is super important. He just did a tutorial, I think, for I Remember on YouTube, and it was like 20 tracks, 21 tracks. So a couple questions. Volker asked me, how did you approach the songwriting and flow for this one? So this one I tried to go as a true follow-up to West Side. Similar arrangement. I wanted to keep it very, very simple and let the instruments really, really speak. And I knew that I had to have a very catchy vocal. So I actually wrote this as an instrumental. So Tony Watts, he's a rapper here. He works with the same team who manages Vanna that I just put Fantasy out with. So we had been trying to figure out the right track and something we could do together. And this one I was like, all right, I think it really makes sense. So songwriting-wise, in regards to my process and the flow, this one actually took me a couple days. I found the ones that are a lot simpler take a tad bit more time. And the reason for that is because you have to fine-tune these little things and add these little accents that are going to really keep it interesting throughout the track. And then Alex is asking, so do you always have the drop ready to send to a rapper? Or do you start with the vocal already to use? Or do you start with the vocal already ready to use prior to composition? It's going to be different for every song. Like for example, the last one with Splash Whoa, he sent me tracks that he was working on, and I was like, hey, I really like this. Can you send it to me? And I could build off of it. This one specifically, say I was going into a session with a rapper, right? A lot of times what I'm going to do is I'm going to possibly compose something with a filler vocal or an instrumental itself and try to kind of see where I would want it to go in regards to the vocals, depending on the actual vibe. And then I'll send a pack. I never, ever send a rapper one song. I found that it's much, much easier for even a label, a rapper, anyone you're working with to say no to one record because they don't really understand what else you're doing and they don't know what else you have, which I think is very, very important, you know? If we're talking label-wise and like running a label, I always want to have more than one song. One, because I want to know what else you're doing, and I want to see if there's any follow-ups, you know? Like, I like to develop artists, and I've found that having those follow-ups is very important. So rapper-wise, like it's going to be different every time, but I'm going to send them instrumentals if I'm sending it for them to actually write to, which this one, I sent it to him previously, and we got to the actual studio, and he kind of just started writing on the spot. He had an idea, and I told him, I was like, hey, I just want a party record, something that's fun, something that's driving, something that we can all relate to, because we're going through a pandemic, you know? I want something that is going to get people excited, you know, and make people happy. And that's something for my music that I think is very, very important. And then Ari's asking, do you save any presets as your go-tos to write stuff faster? Sometimes, like if we go into my user library here, like basses, I have some stuff here from like old tracks that I'll use, and I'll kind of build off of them. So I do have some. I guess I do have quite a bit, but I honestly don't use them very often. Unless I have writer's block and I'm just like, all right, I need something quick. I'm going to cut to these. Vocals, there's not really anything. Synth shots, there's some stuff, but I don't really use it much. I kind of like to start from scratch, you know? In regards to like my writing process, I've always kind of written really fast. So it's something that I never really worried about. But if you were asking if I'd recommend that, if you find it to be beneficial for you, then I would say it's a very, very good thing that you could actually do. All right, so let's go into this. Go into the bass first this time. Or actually, you know what? Yeah. Let's go into the bass first. Because the bass on this is so simple. First, that's off. All right, so this is a bass chain I was given by someone. It's it's excessive, to be totally honest with you. But it really brightens things up. So here's the bass. Here's without it. It's not really there. Same with my drums. No, I don't really save drums, to be honest with you. I'll just pull drums from sample packs real quick. So that's without it, right? So we got 2 OTTs. One's off. This just adds too much top. This one I have down to 20%. We have a glue compressor that's just punch. We have a mastering make it loud and an actual utility kicked up to 5. Like, it's ridiculous, and I won't use this very often unless I feel like I really, really need something with my actual bass, because it's compressing more than I would typically want to. But it added grit. So let's go into the actual bass channel. Silent again. This was from the same pack as the last track, I believe. But the last one was preset 5, where this is preset 3. If we're talking sample packs in regards or preset packs, I have way too many for silent. This one here, I love. It's the 99 patches for New School Deep House Sound Bank. These are all old. I honestly haven't gotten any new sample packs or preset packs for silent probably since I've started using it, other than when I got these, because somebody actually was nice and very generous and gave me all of these packs, and I was very fortunate to get that. So this is another preset. So let's go no processing. It's super quiet. This on there. Here's after. I did not split the actual sub and top frequency on this one. I felt like there was just enough low end in it that I didn't really need to, and it felt controlled. Whereas the last track, I felt like the actual sub was out of control here. I have washout on here. What I like to do with this one is I have another glue compressor here. So in the actual breakdown, I'm washing out that bass. What I'm also doing in that break is it's the DJM filter. It's literally like a Pioneer mixer with the filter. That's open. It's high pass. Yo, Alex, that's actually a really, really good question. He asked me, would you say your trance influences in the beginning of your production process have made it into your G-House sound at all? 100% in regards to my basses. Trance-wise, I was like a huge Marcus Scholl's Coma, Dark, like Cold Harbor fan. And that was a really, really dark driving, almost like techno at 138 or 140, you know? And they have warm sounding basses a lot of times in those tracks, and I found that's translated into this music as well. Also, a lot of filtering and filtering EQ is something I found they do, and I found that's huge here. Why would you use a wave shaper on the saturator? Because it added a lot to my actual sound. So here. You hear that it brings a ton of brightness. So for example, let me just bring the regular bit warmer on here. It just didn't do it. I've been using the wave shaper actually a lot more recently. So say we just brought this here, right? It gives it a little bit more grit. And I found that when I was using the wave shaper and really, really fine tuning, added harmonics. fine-tuning the sound design in regards to that, it just sounded that much better. And I felt like it was so crucial in this specific record, because if you notice, it's probably like 20% more simple than the last record, you know, which is kind of what we went for with West Side. And it brought out harmonic and it gave it a little bit more grit. Something that I've noticed recently that you need to be careful with in regards to the Wave Shaper is I'll lose some low-end punch on it. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just split the actual channels at that point. And I'll just utilize the top and then the actual sub. I honestly never really used the Wave Shaper until a couple months ago. I just never really liked it. And then I started toying around with it a ton more. And I found that it adds a lot of harmonic, and it's adding a lot to my actual basses that are bringing them out, and they're really punching through the actual mix. This utility is doing absolutely nothing, so I'm going to delete it. Shred spread, we're monoed out here. I didn't feel like it needed a lot of width in regards to the actual bass on this one, just because I was getting some width here with this processing. Punch in parallel here. So there's actually a lot of compression on this actual sound, more than I typically would, but I didn't feel like it was losing that actual fullness that I've had with like the rest of my music. There's that. So, a little bit of an interesting routing here, as you can see on my compression. Oh yeah, we have kickstart too. Very crucial, I'd say. So, let me get back to these questions, see if there's any more in here real quick. All right, so if you noticed here with this tom, right, we have this. There's some crazy panning on that, right? Clean that up a bit. It's gonna bother me. So blues drive. We brought it to life. That's a Dr. Fresh trick. I'm not even gonna front. He loves the blues drive. I think it might be one of his favorite like processing tricks. He just loves it. Can you trigger kickstart with MIDI? Absolutely. It just works. Because you don't have to route it to anything. Let's see. It picks up the audio. That's a great question though. Honestly too, kickstart wise, I typically stick with the free punch, the quick chain, and the titer. Those I found to be the most effective. All right, so back to that tom and the bass, because you saw the routing with that actual compression, right? With my settings, the reason I have the ratio kicked up to infinity in the attack and release all the way down, and I have it on RMS, I have a lot of issues with these settings. If it's on peak, it'll start to distort the actual sound. That's why it's in RMS, and it's routed to the tom, because this tom is used as a transitional sound. Right? And I really wanted it to punch through the mix, so that's why I routed the actual bass to the tom, which you'll see here. It's picking up the audio. Is it the audio of the channel it's on, or are you sending other audio channels? It's the audio of the actual channel it's on. That's why I like it so much, because you can put it on anything, whether it's in MIDI, whether it's in audio. Kickstart is going to actually pick up the signal on that actual channel. That's a great question. So yeah, routing wise, I typically don't use the Ableton compressor anymore because I actually use Kickstart so much. And I found that I'll use it more when I'm routing things like in an odd sense. So let me build off of that a little bit, okay? So in this second drop, on the actual group, I have some parallel compression here because I have a top and a low, so I split these. The top, let me see it. And there's a bottom. So we have that, right? This was to add some depth to the actual drop. So let me play that with the bass. So, building off of the routing thing I was talking about, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have issues when I'll use a top synth like this. More simplistic tracks like this is where I'll utilize that technique more than anything. I found that when I will have a top synth that is following the exact same chord progression as my bass line, that if I route it to my actual bass group, it's actually going to tie it into the mix a little bit more because it's not going to be sitting directly on top of the actual sound because it's dipping it a tad bit. So it's very subtle. But it's something that I've found to be very, very beneficial because it doesn't sound like stuff is just stacked. Where typically when you're doing things like that, it's like, oh, the synth's on top of it, just adding harmonic, and it's a little bit more energy. But with this technique, I found that that's not always the case because you can really, really tie it into the mix. Sometimes what I'll do too is actually, let me see real quick. What I'll do is I'll do that with vocals. You know, if I feel like vocals are really, really sitting on top of the actual mix, I'll do the same thing. I may have done it here, and I didn't do it here. And it's very, very helpful. So a little bit more about the bass. I added like a couple pieces. Oh, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Just little accents. Like this was originally here. This was reversed. It was like that. It was cool, but it sounded better reversed and it added a little bit more energy. You do your own mixing. I mix my stuff to like 90% and then I send it out to my engineer. I get it to a point where I can play it live and test it out just to get a crowd reaction and then work from there. So we added these little accents. This is kind of like a drone, which is kind of like a low end frequency sound. So we'll go. With the kick, it's nice and driving. Speaking of Vengeance samples, who asked me that earlier? We got Vengeance right here. It's very, very simple, but it has a groove, and a lot of the reason for that is because a lot of these notes in regards to my chord progression are on the offbeat, as you can see. That first hit is typically the only one with this song that is on the one. Very, very simple. When I send it out, do you send the project? Yeah, I send in stems. I stem out the project. Because what I do, I have two different versions of all of my songs. I'll have everything. I'll have my songwriting process, and then I'll bounce everything to audio, or I'll save it, then bounce everything to audio, and then I'll mix it. Just found like reverb tails, delay tails, stuff like that. It's easier to clean up. All right. So processing on the bass, I went through that one. This bass drum, there's nothing, that utility's not doing shit either. Saturation, soft sine. We have the shred spread. This is monoed out as well. And then I have kickstart. Nothing crazy. Super simple like I was telling you guys. This one doesn't even have an EQ on it. It should. It's on the offbeat. I did it in the actual other project. And this one I put the hard curve on. Here's before. It's cool, but I wanted it to cut through the mix because like the actual bass line here isn't super, super gritty. So I wanted to create that grit when I got through like the actual empty space. Boom. How often do you do these 1 hour challenges for yourself with tracks? I do it once a week. And I found it to be so beneficial. Like the other track for the Night Bass EP, it was a 1 hour challenge track too. And then Chris is asking, shred spread, are you using it for panning? No, shred spread is a stereo imager. So what it's doing is it's spreading the sound out into the actual stereo image rather than like evenly, rather than actually spreading it left or right. Something to keep in mind too when you're spreading sounds out like that in the stereo image. We've talked about phasing, but another thing that's crucial is a lot of times you're thinning things out. So I'll actually throw a saturator or some type of distortion plugin to kind of thicken it back up sometimes if I feel like I'm actually thinning that sound out when I'm spreading it. Alright, let's go into the vocals here. Got that plug too. So there's, as you can see, there's a lot of stacks here. Actually, you know what? This song didn't start as an instrumental. I had a Smoke Pert vocal on here that I built it around from like years ago, so there's still that accent. It's just an accent. Yeah, I don't go above 100% on the shred spread unless it's something I want to do excessively, like that one impact synth that I had in the last track. Alright, so let's go through these vocals right quick. How often do I produce? Like 12 hours a day, every single day. I'm a workaholic, it's insane. Typically I'm going to be spreading like the top end of my bass. Every now and then I will spread some synths, but that's typically it. I don't use that imager a ton. If I'm going to spread things into the stereo image without using that imager, I'll pan left and right. Alright, let's go into these vocals a tad bit. So here was the first aspect of it. Here, this is the hook.
I'm a legend, I'm a rock star, start a mosh pit on a cop car. We gon' pop off, we gon' go hard. She a bad bitch, got me so hard. We gon' turn up, it's gon' go down. We gon' show out, this our show now. When I pull out, she gon' go down. Tony Watts up, I ain't coming down. I'm a legend.
So, stacking vocals, just working with rappers, I've found to be an extremely, extremely important thing because you get the width of the actual sound. And a lot of times I'll pitch them like I did here. So if we go into this one is pitched down 5 semitones. I've just found that with vocals, pitching stuff 5 semitones harmonically just sounds so good. And as you can see, it's really, really tough, but it adds some depth, it adds some width. A lot of times too, say I'm going into the studio with a rapper, we'll do stacks. So like with Splash, we have a hip-hop record on the actual album, and it's 3 layers for like each hook, each verse, and then we have the ad-libs. And I've just found it to be beneficial. Alex is asking, do you think you'll do the 1 hour challenge more than once a week now that it's resulted in a couple bangers recently? I would say no, because I don't want to overuse it. And I found it's something that I really love to go back to once a week, you know, and it's like I really look forward to it. I don't want to do it too much. Can you A/B vocals with zero processing? Just so you know, there was processing on these vocals that came from the studio engineer when we recorded. So let me turn off what's on my actual group so you can hear. So we'll go.
I'm a legend. I'm a legend, I'm a rock star, start a mosh pit on a cop car. We gon' pop off, we gon' go hard. She a bad bitch, got me so hard. We gon' turn up, it's gon' go down. We gon' show out, this our show now. When I pull out, she gon' go down. Tony Watts up, I ain't coming down.
So as you can see, there's some clicks. He speaks very clearly. Like, Tony's a beast in the studio. And some parallel glue compression. Just to tie those vocals together so they're not sitting on top of each other. This is the de-esser from Waves. This is the male sh, which is taking those sharp S's away, which is really, really helping. So here's with everything on now.
I'm a legend, I'm a rock star, start a mosh pit on a cop car. We gon' pop off, we gon' go hard. She a bad bitch, got me so hard. We gon' turn up, it's gon' go down. We gon' show out, this our show now. When I pull out, she gon' go down. Tony Watts up, I ain't coming down.
Alright, ad-lib wise, there's nothing crazy on here, but
mosh pit.
Yeah.
reverb. Just some like vocal shouts.
So wow.
kind of coexist with the vocals. That one's pitched. That one's like a full octave. It just adds some depth and variation in between like the full vocal like hook and the ad libs themselves. Because if you can see, these last ones are pitched down an octave. Then we have another ad lib here.
I'm a rock star on a cop car. We gonna go hard, hard.
Big reverb on that. I really wanted to wash it out and make it sound wide.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Something I'll do a lot too is I'll actually have layered vocals, and one will be dry, and then the second layer will be the exact same vocal, super washed out, and you can tuck it. So what that does is it splits your main vocal from your actual reverb layer, and it allows you to really keep it clean. And if you really need to tuck that reverb, you can, and it really, really helps so you don't wash out and really muddy up that main vocal. It's cool. Let me play that with the ad-libs. Yeah, the ad-libs are kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm a legend, I'm a rock star, start a mosh pit on a cop car. We gon' pop off, we gon' go hard. She a bad bitch, got me so hard. We gon' turn up, it's gon' go down. We gon' show out, this our show now. When I pull out, she gon' go down. 20 watts up, I ain't coming down.
So I'll probably, in the final one, I cut this. It was a lot cleaner. We have an ad-lib piece here with a delay. Just kind of add some depth here, as you can hear. Then we get into less creepier in the mix, for sure. I agree. You guys are hilarious. So then here's kind of like the verse, which I'll play. Let's go here. This was the fun part for me. We were kind of going like Bay Area, like party, like E40 style with this. And as you can see, there's no other processing on here, just some EQing, and it's also pitch 5 semitones.
Turned up, geeking and shit. Her boyfriend mad, they ain't speaking and shit. She had too much to drink, but she don't care. He all in his feeling like this ain't fair. Nah, he can't find her, he going home alone. She young, wild, and free, and all alone. Fuck backstage, fuck VIP. The after party going up, you can come with me.
So as you can see, if I pull that de-esser down, it'll really kind of mute those vocals, almost in a dry sense.
Turned up, geeking and shit. Her boyfriend mad, they ain't speaking and shit. She had too much to drink, but she don't care.
You want to be careful with that because you want really everything to come out, you know? What I did here too, this was a cool effect because I felt like this this break, this 8-bar break was kind of empty and the vocals carried through in like with a weird delay, so I kind of looped them. So
come with me.
And it's really, really tough.
I'm a legend.
Then I have a reverse. I always have reverses going into like my actual vocals. I've just found them to be like super helpful. So let's go into the synths a little bit. So there's the chords. This was actually a saw. So this is bounced to audio. This was a saw that I used as a sustained note, and I just pitched it and turned it into an actual riser. Woo! All right, so with that, no crazy EQing. There's an excessive auto pan on this, and I did that specifically due to the simplicity of the actual breakdown in the track because I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting. Sidechain, pretty strong. Without it, it's just kind of like boring. It's kind of sitting on top of the mix. Boom. With it pumping like that, it just sounds a bit better. Bass clef's washout. If you guys don't know bass clef, that sneeze pre-drop, folks. And then I have the DJM filter on here, which you can kind of see the automation. It's high passing. Like this breakdown is so simple. Like if we're talking instrumentation wise, we have like an impact. We have the bass, which I believe the low end is cutting out too. Yeah, I want to actually show you guys like what's in this bass clef chain if you haven't seen it, because it's kind of intense. There's a grain delay, an auto filter, a reverb, an EQ, a filter delay, and a compressor on it. So you'll see what it's doing through the sound. True, no one's used the sneeze. I might have to record that. I'll give you guys writer's credits. Alright, so this was another synth. This is the JX3P2. This is a Roland Cloud synth. I would bring it up, but it's literally going to kick my CPU to like 150%. So I use a lot of the Roland Cloud plugins because they have the emulation, which I'm going to show you guys. They have like the old school Jupiter 8. They have the Juno 106. They have the SH2, the TB303, the System 8, the D50, the Concerto, the JX3P. They're these amazing, amazing vintage synths that are so warm and sound so good. I feel like I'm actually using analog. Cameron's asking, do you split your sub frequencies into a separate channel and make it mono and all that always, or sometimes just leave the sound of the sub as it is? It's going to depend on the actual sound in the track, if I feel like I'm getting enough sub or not. Like in the last one we went over, I split them. But in this one, it's singular. You know, the sub is in the actual sound itself. I didn't split them because I felt like the low end was strong enough here. So this was kind of like an eerie pluck. This one is layered too, so we get the higher end. And we'll get the low end here. The processing on that, so you guys know, it was simple EQing, and there's an auto pan on them. Left, right. So that was just an accent. Honestly, it's a very, very simple pluck that I wrote, nothing crazy. This is what I felt like carried the track a lot. This was an actual splice sample I found. I cut it, and it's frozen right now. Let me unfreeze it for you guys. So this was kind of like an eerie sound that I just felt like was cool. In one of my tracks called Hello, from back in the day with Fresh, we had a synth that was very, very similar sounding here. And I felt like this one had a similar vibe, and I really, really liked it. So let me play that for you guys. So this is what it originally sounded like. So you can hear like the actual sample. So it's a lot different. Alex is asking, with hook composition like that pluck, you're entering MIDI and with mouse, right? No, I'm actually playing on the keyboard. Very, very simple. Because these chord progressions are so, so simple. Everything's in minor, you know, and it's, I think this track is in E minor. Yeah, this is in E minor. So I'm just writing those. And I actually wrote, that was the last piece of this that I think I actually wrote. And if we're talking like, let's see, if we're talking these chords, it's the same chord progression as the bass. So typically, when I'm writing, I'm actually playing this on the keyboard, and it's just very, very simple. And I'll kind of work through the idea, and I've just found that it kind of works in regards to like your actual workflow better if you're doing that than punching things in with your with your with your actual mouse. It's just easier because I can go back and go back and go back and go back, and I'll just record through. Like what I'll do is I'll set my drums, and I'll have them set for like a 2 minute loop, and I'll just play, and then I'm like, when I hear the right one, I'm like, okay, I need to quantize that, and that's where it'll be sitting, and I'll usually have it within a minute. I'm not trained in piano at all. I've just kind of self-taught myself, and I kind of know scales and a little bit of music theory, nothing crazy. Um, and learning those scales has really, really been helpful in just knowing what works in regards to each key. And I have like something I have written down that I just read it daily to try and memorize everything. Effects. There's literally 3 effects in this entire song. There's the impact, like I was telling you about, which I use here on the break.
I'm a legend, I'm a rock star, start a mosh pit.
Nothing crazy. And then I use it as an impact sound here on the drop.
Tony Watts up, I ain't coming down.
Nothing crazy. There's not even an EQ on it yet. So like these projects are raw. I have 2 risers and they're just pretty long. Nothing crazy. And it's like so simple, you know, and I've found I just have more fun with these simple tracks, you know, and I feel like it's a different type of writing process and a different challenge when you keep things so simple that you have to find a way to make it interesting. Are you hard quantizing the notes after you enter them in, or partial quantizing? Partial quantizing, because sometimes I want them to be sitting naturally, because sometimes I found when they're sitting right on the grid, you'll lose a little bit of groove. So I'll kind of go between both of them as well. If I feel like the hard quantize is sounding better, then I'll go with that. If I'm partially quantizing, then I'll go with that one. And that's something I'm doing 100% by ear. So drums, kick, simple drums here again. Nothing crazy, like not even a lot of percussion. Simple EQ, and my shred spread has it modeled out. Clap-wise, I only have 2, 5 left, 5 right. I have a really, really short one here. And that's more of a snap. It's kind of like a hip-hop sounding clap. It's super short. The reason for that is because I wanted these drums to be really, really punchy. So if you notice, my kick is really, really short too. Like it's ending before the offbeat hit where, say, a hi-hat would come in. It's super short, but it has a very, very strong low end, and that top is really, really strong too. I went with the large chamber reverb on this. I typically don't use Ableton reverbs anymore. I kind of just stick with Valhalla just because it sounds so good. So that's on the shorter one. In regards to my claps and what I'm doing with my reverb, I'll typically put the reverb on the higher frequency sounding clap, just for reference. And you'll hear that's going to end before that next kick comes in. It almost sounds like the reverb is falling into the kick. And this one is a lot thicker. I went through like, for this top clap, I probably went through like 9 different sounds. It was a headache finding that one. That one's kind of tucked. So let's go into the hi-hats real quick, and then we'll wrap up for you guys. So we have this top one. This was like an actual hip-hop hi-hat loop. As you can see here, I did a little bit different EQing. I dipped around 8,000. They were super sharp. Like, it's almost like annoyingly sharp. And I really wanted it. Almost, it's like it sounds nasally in a sense, and I didn't really like that. Um, an aha moment. Let me go through this percussion real quick, and I'll answer that for you. That's a good one. The bit warmer, just to give it some life. And then this auto pan set at 1 bar, kind of sending things back and forth pretty quickly. And then we have kickstart. Open hi-hats, kind of like I showed you guys on that last project. It might be the same sound, to be totally honest with you. I love that, just simple 909. It's pan, 10 left, and then we got... That one has a little reverb on it. This is kind of like a weird open hat. It just was cool as an accent. Then we got a little bit more percussion that's just kind of wider. It just added some depth. I wanted to give this some space because, honestly, there's no crazy, like, there's no shakers. There's no, like, really super offbeat, bouncy hi-hats here. It's very simple, very to the point. So I kind of got 4 layers and really spread them to give it some depth. Which this one is kind of more of a closed hat. And then we got this one, which is a bit longer. So if we're talking drums all together here, just a simple groove. All right. So that's this one. I want to answer any last few questions you guys have too. Alex was asking an aha moment for me as a producer coming up. Honestly, I think it was the moment that I finally realized that I didn't have to overproduce and that I could just keep things very simple. When I started to really keep things simple, that's when I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I really found my sound, which I think as an upcoming producer is so, so crucial because it takes so much time to really find your sound, you know? And when you find that style and you really, really believe that that's like a purest thing for you and it's super, and that's what you're supposed to be doing, I feel like that's the biggest aha moment because you're like, all right, I truly feel like this is the type of music that I'm supposed to be making. And then you know that in my opinion, you're not going to lose that because you love it. Brandon, in regards to my vocal processing, not a ton. I went over that a bit earlier, but on this one here, we just got some parallel compression. My de-esser and the speech enhancer, kind of just to bring it to life. I want to play this without the speech enhancer specifically so you guys can hear it. As you can see, I turned the lows off again, and I boosted only 3 dB on each. So, let's go.
Start a mosh pit on a cop car. We gon' pop off, we gon' go hard. She a bad bitch, got me so hard.
Really brings it to life. All right, couple more. What would you say to a G-House producer struggling to sound unique, or any genre producer for that matter? Something for me is I really started to take influence from the hip-hop I listened to growing up. I'm from the West Coast. I'm based in Phoenix, and it's something that I was like, all right, I grew up listening to Pop, Snoop, something of that sort. And when I really started to incorporate sounds from different genres into my music, that's when I felt like my sound was unique to myself. All right. I'm going to answer these last 3, and then I got to jump out of here, guys. Christopher, once you found your sound as a producer, how long after that was it that you started seeking releases on labels or just releasing in general? Probably 2 to 3 years, because I really wanted to fine-tune my music and hone it in and really show that it was unique to me, you know? I almost quit music in 2015, and then Fresh signed one of my records, and literally that came out, and a couple months later, my first Night-Bass release came out, and then Hello came out, you know? So I think it's something that, like, over time you have to be patient with, and when you feel confidently that you're ready and that your music is unique, take that step. because I don't think there's any specific time on that overall. It just feels like when you feel ready, that's when you should do it. Chris, do you still watch tutorials or other artist breakdowns like this? Yeah, I just watched that Chris Lake one on I Remember last week, and I was just like, it's so crazy because the dude is just an absolute legend. It's incredible, you know, and it's crazy how 20 channels can make a track like so amazing. So, all right, Steve. Last question from Steve. When using shred spreader, are you using it on mono or stereo sounds? I'll do it on both. If I feel like there's something that's in mono that I want to spread and it should be in stereo, I will. And if there's something in stereo that I feel like it needs to be in mono, then I'll do the same thing. I'm sorry, like that's a subjective thing, so it's kind of hard to give you a direct answer. But I'll do it to each one in whatever I regards to sound better. These are good questions. I'll keep going. When I send beats to rappers, do you send them the MP3 file itself, or do you send them the SoundCloud link? I usually send on Dropbox. SoundCloud quality is just not that high. Chris Lake, just look up Chris Lake's Twitch thing, like Chris Lake I Remember YouTube tutorial, and it should be good. It's on YouTube. He did it through Twitch, but it's on there. So, but yeah, guys, I had a blast today, so I appreciate it. Thank you for sticking through these projects with me. It was really, really exciting and fun to kind of show you some stuff that's not out yet and really go through these projects. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to really listen and come through. So see you guys soon. Album drops next week. Check it out. Later.